Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of Captains of Industry. I'm Eleni Jakos. Private healthcare consumes over 50% of total healthcare spending in South Africa. However, it still remains inaccessible to the majority of the population. Medical aid schemes are currently the main means of financing private healthcare, though only a portion of South Africans are active medical aid members. It's a tough industry to operate in, but one player that's managed to navigate the medical aid landscape for close to 40 years, growing into one of the country's largest medical aid administration companies, is Medscheme. The man responsible for growing Medscheme Group operations even further is André Meyer, and he's our Captain of Industry tonight. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
2003, Medscheme was under significant strain from a financial perspective. You, however, have come in and changed the company quite extensively. You even expanded to as far as Ireland. Take us back to 2003 and the scenario that you found yourself in back then and how you managed to turn things around so significantly.
Yes, I was with Alexander Forbes before then. I was MD of the healthcare division. Alexander Forbes was a shareholder in Medscheme, and Medscheme was in trouble. They asked me to come across in 2003 to sort it out. I came into the business, appointed a new executive team. It took us from 2003 through to 2005 to turn the business around. 2006, we got new shareholders in the business. With them, we then decided on the strategy going forward. We recognize that the growth of healthcare in South Africa is quite limited, and we decided that although we are very much a South African company and will always be, we need to look at opportunities outside of the borders of South Africa as well.
Well, you've got 3.1 million lives under administration at this point. In 2003, what was the scenario that was playing out then?
We had clients leaving us almost on a monthly basis. We had to come in and convince the clients that we have a plan of action to turn the business around, and that we will grow the business going forward. And the biggest problem that we had at that stage was a problem with the IT system, which we since rectified, and we've seen growth ever since.
Tell us about some of the difficult decisions that you needed to take. You mentioned that you appointed a new executive team, new shareholders came into play as well. I'm sure that you weren't probably very liked when you actually came on board in 2003.
Yeah, that was for me personally a very difficult time. Unfortunately, the turnaround required that we had to retrench a number of both management members, but also a large number of our staff members. We had at that stage, over 4,000 staff members in the business, and their entrenchment entailed or included approximately about 1,000 people. So, and I can tell you that I had a number of sleepless nights over that.
4,000 staff members back then. What is your staff scenario?
At the moment?
Yeah, at the moment.
3,200.
So still keeping it relatively low. You said you had a lot of sleepless nights. I mean, relatively tough decisions that you needed to take back then, but you knew that it was for the best when it comes to the company and the outlook. Tell us about how you managed to do this as a leader, knowing that you were, of course, going to take these tough decisions and affect people's lives.
Yeah, as I said, it was for me very, very difficult. It's not easy to tell people that you don't have jobs for them. But we had to do it in the best interest of the broader business and of getting the business back on track. The business didn't have a clear strategy. They didn't have an action plan. They had a very bad relationship with their clients, and we had to fix that, and that's unfortunately part of the job.
Have you surrounded now yourself with very strong leaders that are able to embark on putting in place your vision that you've got for the company? And as I mentioned in the intro, that you have gone as far as Ireland at this point in time. So it seems that in just a few years, you've managed to take a lot of risks, expansion risks, but it's actually working to your favor.
Yes, what is important in the success of any company is the quality of the people that you have within the company. And I can say very proudly that we have probably some of the best people in the industry working for us. I have a good team of executive people around me. We've also structured the company to be aligned with our strategy, and we have split the business into 3 distinct territories now. We have South Africa, and we have an MD in charge of South Africa. We have Africa, excluding South Africa, and again, MD in charge of that territory. And then we have an MD in charge of the international expansion program for us, based in our office in Mauritius.
With regards to the company's strength within the South African market, as I mentioned, 40 years that you have been within the South African space. We're looking at 3.1 million lives. Surely you should have had a lot more lives within this space. I mean, tell us about some of the strategies, the challenges within South Africa. We've got a population of around 46 million people, most of which just do not have access to medical aid.
Well, give you an example of where we've come from in 2003. We had, at that stage, had 1 million lives under administration. As you said, today we have 3.1 million lives under administration. So that's exceptional growth in terms of number of members. But the healthcare industry in South Africa is a very difficult industry. It's an industry which has not grown over the past 10 years. The growth that we've seen in the industry really has come from the government employee medical scheme, or GEMS, which is growing very successfully. It's a very well-run scheme. That's where our growth has come from as well. We provide services to them. And that's also then the reason why we decided that with the saturated market in the healthcare industry, private healthcare industry in South Africa, that we need to get involved outside of the borders of South Africa.
So in other words, I mean, getting new lives at this stage within South Africa is becoming tougher. Do you think that it's just a very big issue for most people within South Africa to use the medical aid scenario that is playing out right now, given the fact that it is very expensive, it is very costly, it's not getting any cheaper, that we know is also happening?
It's an issue of affordability. People just cannot afford the cost of these type of benefits, and and that's also why you have the same number of people in the private healthcare industry year after year. The future would be around providing cover for the population that are uncovered through NHI, and we are very supportive of NHI, and we believe it's going to make a huge difference to the country as a whole.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned NHI, National Health Insurance Scheme. So let's touch on some of the challenges that we know could actually face the industry when NHI comes on board. We know that pilot projects are currently underway as well. The Minister is embarking on a 1 billion rand spend this year, talking about 6 billion rand in the next few years. These are large numbers, but not nearly enough to cover all South Africans.
Yes, we're very pleased with what we've seen in the last budget speech, the commitment that, again, government has shown towards NHI. As I said, we believe that it's positive for the country. We've seen research in other countries where...
For South Africans, essentially.
Yes, absolutely. We've seen research in other countries where they have an NHI structure in place, and it's proven that over time it is in the best interest of the economy as a whole. The economy performs better if people are covered for these 4 healthcare conditions.
It's interesting you say this, because when you look at the crisis that has been playing out globally and you see the big price tag that the US is paying for what we see on health, and also in the UK, this is where a lot of the cutting is occurring within the health space. So it's interesting that you say that the countries perform better with those that are covered extensively across the board. Do you think that there are pros and cons down the line?
There definitely are pros and cons. Obviously, it costs a lot of money. We would, as the government has said over last year, the rollout is going to happen over 14 years. It's not going to happen, in the next 2 or 3 years. It's going to start with the pilot projects. It's going to be focusing in the rural areas. It's going to be focusing on primary care projects. And we believe that's a start. It's something which we do not have in place right now. And I believe that overall it will be positive for the country.
Well, medical aid contributions are rising significantly, in fact, over the last decade. And you say that new lives under administration are also relatively flat as an industry whole, not only Medscheme, of course, increasing quite dramatically, as we mentioned, since 2003. Clearly, there's a direct correlation when it comes to medical aid contribution increases and the amount of new lives that come on board.
Yeah, there are a number of factors that drive the cost of healthcare, and it's not unique to South Africa. It's really all over the world. There is a consolidation, and there has been consolidation in the healthcare industry, private healthcare industry in South Africa for a number of years now, and that is where a few of the larger players have had their growth from. But it's a very low margin business for us. It's a business where you need economy of scale to actually make a profit.
Let's also touch on this, because it has been said that medical schemes are non-profit entities established for the benefit of members. It seems that there's a bit of a disconnect with what people on the ground believe medical aid schemes have from a profitability perspective and what really occurs. And you're telling me here it's a low margin business.
It is a low margin business. And the the man in the street often confuse the profits that they see of life assurance businesses with that of medical schemes. I can tell you that in the medical scheme by law is a trust fund. It is managed by an independent board of trustees, and the profits that are made within that medical scheme belong to the members of that medical scheme.
When it comes to perceptions, how do we change perceptions extensively? And it seems that, as we mentioned, I mean, if you look at the percentage of the population in South Africa that has access to medical aid, obviously very small. What kind of numbers can you foresee going forward? I mean, ex the NHI, we still have to ensure that we cover more and more South Africans.
We don't believe that the membership in private healthcare will grow going forward with the introduction of NHI. In fact, we believe that there will be a diminishing number of members within the private healthcare. We believe that there will be a future for medical schemes going forward, but it really would, with the introduction of NHI, obviously depending on how NHI is funded, we believe that there will be a reduction in membership because of the lack of affordability.
Absolutely, and obviously if we do see NHI, there's going to be a surcharge on those that choose to keep their private medical aid scheme.
Yeah. People who belong to medical aids would have to pay both for the medical aid as well as the contribution towards NHI.
I mean, this brings up the next topic when it comes to quality of healthcare. If we do see NHI rolled out and all South Africans pay a specific amount, or those that can actually afford it, are we going to see this being compromised?
One of the biggest challenges government would have in the introduction of NHI, and the Minister of Health has said this over and over, is that they need to improve the current facilities. And there's certainly, again, with the budget speech, there's commitment to put money towards it. We probably have the best Minister of Health this country's ever had. The Minister of Health is very committed to making sure that NHI is rolled out. He's very committed to making sure that all South Africans have cover. And he's also committed to ensuring that the public facilities are upgraded.
When you see some of the big issues, I mean, you're talking about infrastructure spent here within the health space. Is this what your big concern is right now?
We're not concerned about it. We believe it will happen. We believe that, as I said, there is a commitment from government to making sure that the public facilities are upgraded. And we believe it's good overall for the industry, also for the private healthcare industry, because we believe that with the improvement of public facilities, especially hospitals, that you as a private healthcare provider will be able to refer your members to public facilities, which will bring more competition into the market, which will hopefully drive down the cost of providing healthcare.